Peace and blessings, everybody. It's June the 6th, the year 2018. I got a message here from Gary Northington. Gary Northington is a military veteran. I believe he worked with electronics, and he's been in prison for a long, long time. Let me look up his arrest date just to be certain. Gary Northington was arrested on January the 21st, 1987. So he's been in prison over 30 years. My goodness. Well, he wrote a message, and we're going to read it. I pray you take the time to write him back. His charges are conspiracy to murder. He said he was set up because he was exposing a child pedophilia ring. I've got a book around here somewhere called, what is it called? Hold on just one second. It's called the Franklin Cover-Up. The Franklin Cover-Up, Child Abuse, Satanism, and Murder in Nebraska by John W. DeCamp. Gary Northington knew John W. DeCamp. And he also, Gary Northington wrote a book called Satanic Deception about the same topic. Here's what Gary Northington had to say in his message. Dear Rudy, I've been tied up filing a motion in my federal civil rights case on genocide by Corizon Health Incorporated. On May the 30th, 2018, 12 pages of your letter were rejected by the JCF mailroom because on non-white paper. I'll have them picked up and photocopied, which will take about a month. I would like to read The Kennel, Exposing the Prison Industrial Complex from Inside. However, MDOC will only let us receive books directly from the publisher. You know what I've got to do? I've got to take a pen and I've got to write that down so when I get to the end of the letter, I'll have an action item. So I'm going to go to 2peter3.com and order Gary Northington a copy of The Kennel. Okay. Let's see what he says next. The Franklin cover-up arrived here on 24th of May, but they would not let it in. So I may have my sister pick it up. So they said that the prison system won't let the Franklin cover-up get into any of the prisoners. And I wanted to test that, and it appears that it's a paperback copy. It should have been able to go through, but there I've confirmed it. The Franklin cover-up is not allowed in prisons. Thanks for your note on my self-defense book. My tablet picked self-defense out of all the possibilities in the just written sentence. What are the odds of that? I guess he sends me messages on a tablet that he has in prison, and it does some auto-correction. The autofill on my JP5 tablet is interesting. It sometimes changes words or numbers without my authorization. For example, CFM of a web address automatically became FM until I figured out the override. In my Satanic Deception article, it turned Ordo Abe Ko into Ordo and Ko about halfway through the page. Our mini tablets did not come with an instruction manual. I found a typo in my fourth public office mafia email dated May the 16th, 2018. In the shortest paragraph starting with 2, it says I was transferred 3 times. I was transferred 6 times in 7 months. Diesel therapy that doesn't work on me. Bring it on. Can you correct this typo? It's going to be very hard. You know, everybody tells me to correct typos. The prisoners always send me stuff and then they say, oh, that needs to be corrected. I had the same thing from Free Laser last night. He sent me like must 100 pages and I scanned it all in, and then he said, oh, some of those pages shouldn't be scanned. I'm like, I can't, it's just the overwhelming amount of administrative work is starting to get to me, and there's only Aaron and me, so I don't think I'll be able to go back and correct that. God has given me repeat experiences of many types to help me remember and understand. For example, on August the 10th, 1969 and August the 10th, 1972, I walked away from a head-on motor vehicle collision exceeding 45 miles per hour. August the 10th was my deceased mother's birthday. On 31st of December, 1968 to January 1st, 1969, and on October the 17th, 1977, I had 2 near-death experiences. When I was 17 and 27 years old, someone pointed a gun at me and said, I'm going to kill you. The first time was a gang intimidation tactic where I said, what are you going to do, send me to my maker? Laughed at the gang leader, turned around and walked away. The second time was an assassination or intimidation attempt from the Satanist of Nebraska, where I pulled out my gun and told the assassin to put his gun down and leave, and he did. I was not afraid nor angry either time, but the second time my adrenaline was at 110% and my knees were shaking. Hey, it helps when you know there's a loving God in the afterlife. The near-death experiences were interesting. On December the 31st, 1968 and January the 1st, 1969, my first near-death experience was while in a 24-hour coma. In late 1968, I had 100 fever for weeks that began upon cleaning up where Agent Orange had been used as a weed killer. Most guys on the cleanup got medical discharges. I began blacking out at USAF Tech School, where I was one of the top students, so I stood up during class, but was still blacking out. Weeks later, I was given a Hong Kong flu vaccination, and that caused my fever to vacillate between 103 and 105. At this point, I became too weak to sit up and then blacked out and went into a coma. While in the coma, I recall what others describe as going to the light. Except I went into the light. I went through a passageway of a big meeting hall with departed souls on both sides. Those souls had a flame burning in each of their hearts, the Holy Spirit. When each of those souls, of which one was my mother, touched me, the beautiful love of God came from the flame to fill me. I traveled the passageway and up into the light where the love of God was overpowering and saturated my entire being. The Holy Spirit, Jesus, and the Father were there. I traveled up to the throne and turned to the left to face Jesus. Jesus communicated without spoken words that it was not my time, but I had a job to do. My soul returned to my body, and 24 hours later I came out of the coma in a very weak state, which required 2 months of further hospitalization at Kessler Air Force Base. Number 2, in October of 1977, I had the other near-death experience that was similar to the first. I recall looking from above upon a man doing CPR on me before I went through the meeting hall into the light. This time, both my mother and father touched me as I traveled the passageway, where the first time it was only my mother. When I became conscious, the man had earlier quit CPR because he thought I was dead for lack of breathing and pulse. The love of God has no comparison in earthly realms. Wow. Thanks for the webpage and descriptions of it. I have never expected such concern and help. I also greatly appreciate the Ann Arbor shelter address and phone numbers. I'm certainly blessed to have good friends and the Lord's guidance. I wrote them at once. It is a surprise that John DeCamp's website is no longer valid. He may have retired. I remember him from the early 1970s. When I did a security work for his business office. 45 years is a long time to be in the public eye. I'll write about Sessions versus DeMaya in another email, which again took 6,000 characters. I'll have to research. I think you only get 6,000 characters per message. I'll have to research whether continually vague applies to my situation. Right now, 1,057 hours. I'm exhausted from being on the go since 0430 hours. Thanks for the info. My brother is in poor health due to chlorofluoroethylene exposure at Chrysler. It caused multiple myeloma. He is one of my addresses to go to upon release, but I'd rather not put extra stress on him. I've not heard from Abby since I was hospitalized from multiple heart attacks and alleged strokes. In the hospital secure unit, there were no communications in or out, and I watched the TV as a severe weather hit her area for weeks. MDOC staff, which I think stands for Michigan Department of Corrections staff, threw Abby's new address and phone number, which I can't recall, in the trash when they packed me for the hospital. Her local friends and officials sources say she died. I'll let you know any further info. I'm at 6,000 characters again. All right, that's Gary Michael Northington, a veteran who was advocated for by Officer McLam. He was exposing child pedophilia and Satanism, satanic ritual abuse, and child auctions. Look up on the internet, Gary Northington, child auctions, and you'll see various articles written about him and by him.